Alright you guys, moving on to part 2 of the cutting plans and assembling your parts of the ultra micro bat wing. So let's just do a quick little recap of what we started. First we took the piece marked top fuselage, which is right here. We took and cut a line on all three front and the sides. And then on the hinge line we just scored a line. So we made this little flap open up like that. It's just going to be on a hinge like that. We cut that out, and we cut out the top of our fuselage. Which is our main top piece. Then we went ahead and cut out the sides of our fuselage. It's marked front and back. Straight piece is the front. We took and cut that out. Don't forget we didn't cut out the air intake thing yet, because if you cut that out too soon, your part will just be real weak and bend real easy. So don't cut that piece out yet, just leave it there. That's your front, right and left side of your main fuselage, which is this piece. Alright, moving on from there, then we move to the canopy, which there was two pieces. We cut a left and a right, which are these canopy pieces. Alright, our next step was we took out and cut the whole main airframe out. Here's your CG line, is where your CG is going to be. So that's what we did. We took and straight cut all these pieces, then we 45'd the nose pieces, and then we went into a straight cut down the sides and the back. So it's pretty much all straight cuts except for the very front leading edges. Remember, you always 45 those. That's what we did. We took and cut out the whole main airframe. As far as the thrust tube right here, we'll be getting to that in another video. Alright, I know I messed up in the steps, but I forgot to cut out the tail fin, so I cut it out. I traced it on my foam. I made a duplicate and a duplicate of this. So once we had our main airframe, then we took and assembled these pieces, which was the top, the two sides, the canopy. Alright, now we're gonna then we took and did our right elevon that we cut off, and we hinged both sides. Remember, my hinges are always on the bottom of the jets, so there's your 45 right there. It's actually a V notch taken out of there. Remember, we didn't glue our fuselage on because we want to still install our electronics and our thrust tube. And this is why I said to keep all your pieces too, because you can still pull off all your, where you're going to set all your electronics and your receiver and your battery. So you just keep these pieces off to the side. Now moving on to a very important step here. We're going to take and create a little airfoil on these two front pieces. So we're going to have them bend slightly downward like that. I'm going to show you how to do it real fast. Take and flip over your bat wing. Grab a piece of clear Scotch tape. You want it to start from where your CG line is, and then just a slight bend. So I take and push in the center with my thumb, push down with my pinky, give it a little airfoil, Stick your tape on there. There you go. Gives that nose just a slight downward. Slight. You don't want a whole lot. Your tape will hold that bend. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Again, I just grab it, I put my thumb in the middle of it, give it a slight bend, hold the position of it, put your tape on there, make sure they're both got a nice little airfoil on them, just like so. So that way our bat wing now has an airfoil on the front two leading edges of the wings. And it comes back to almost your CG line, which is about right here. So you want that just a slight bend. Very crucial. Alright, moving on, we're going to cut out our thrust tube. You'll see here, it's made for a 30mm or a 28mm. We're going to be using a 30mm, so we're going to want to cut on this outside line, not the inside. That one's a 28mm. Goes the same on both. So let's take and cut this out right now. Again, I'm going with the 30mm EDF unit. Go ahead and straight cut all these pieces. Cut out the whole thrust tube. There we have it. Again, I cut out for the 30mm EDF unit. Take your plans, place them on the bottom side of your micro bat wing, line it up. You want to make sure it's nice and centered, which is right there. Now we're just going to take and mark it, all of our corners. I'm just doing this real quickly, you guys can take your time. Alright, now we can go ahead and connect the dots here. I made this actual opening a little smaller than what you're going to need, so that way when you build your ducted fan or your thrust tube, you'll have a little room for air, so you can cut off a little of the foam if you have to. You don't want to cut off too much in the beginning. Again, I'm just connecting all these little dots I made on every corner. We can take and cut that out now, which I'm just going to freehand it. You might want to use a ruler on this just to make sure they're perfectly straight. I've done enough of them, so I'm just going to freehand this stuff. You're going to run into some of your hot glue where you put it in there, so break through it in the middle. One more cut. Now again, at the back of your thrust tube, you could cut this at a 45 if you want, because your thrust tube is going to be kicking wind across it. So I mean, if you want to make that at a 45, go ahead. I'll just clean it up when I'm done installing everything. So there's our cutout for our thrust tube and our EDF unit, 30 millimeter. There's our fuselage with our canopy. Now I'm going to install these little micro control horns. These are from Dubro. They're just little micro control horns. I'll show you how I install them. And we can look at our plans and see around about where they are. They're right in this area. I always install my control horns from the back side. And always make sure you get it right over the hinge line. You want those little holes right over your hinge line. And the elevon is flush like this. You can leave the little pegs on them, glue them in, hot glue them. Alright, and now after you can install your control horns, this would be the time you would want to, in order to beef up some of this foam so it never cracks in these areas, I always use clear Scotch tape. This is just another step that you can take to make sure your plane doesn't break when you crash. Just let it fall on there. And like I said, just beef up the areas with Scotch tape across your main parts of your wing. Maybe put one this way, one going this way. Run them into your elevons. Go ahead and do the same down here with some Scotch tape. Anywhere where you want some, be more rigid. And then after you install all your Scotch tape, you'd go ahead and paint it. Just like this one here. I went ahead and painted the main airframe and the fins. Just go ahead and paint everything black with your Dubro control horns in there. Do the same for this. I forgot we were working on the little air intakes that we drew on here. All you want to do is straight cut these on the 3 sides. These are air intakes for your EDF unit. This is why we're cutting them now, because it would have made the piece real flimsy and it probably would have cracked before you even got to this point. Now I just want to score it and then cut a little 45 out of it. Kind of depends on how much intake you want, how much deep of the cut you're going to make. As you can see there, I'll take and drop a little bit of hot glue down in there. Go ahead and fold it back on itself. And wipe off the excess hot glue. You can always trim these down. If you don't want that much intake on them, then you can trim them down to what you want. There's that side. Do the same for the other side. Here's the nose, the back. Yeah, you would definitely want to do this before you went and shot this with paint. So we just cut out our little, just score it. Don't cut all the way through, and then give it a little nice little 45. Pull your piece out of there. There we got our next one. Just put a little bit of glue, wipe off the excess, and fold it out on itself. Make sure it kind of matches your other one. Just like so. So now you got your air intakes for your EDF unit. Like I said, if you don't want them sticking out that far, go ahead and trim them back a little. At this point you can trim off probably half of that if you wanted. And then go ahead and shoot your fuselage with your paint. I use testers, spray enamel, flat black. Shoot it inside and out so you don't see no white on the inside of your plane. Same here, shoot everything black. Alright, there's your main build for your micro bat wing. Things are sweet to fly, let me tell you. Alright, we'll go over this thrust tube for a second. As you can see, I got a 28mm EDF and a 30mm EDF. Here we have a 28. It's the front of your thrust tube, the back. You can see it's marked 28mm for the inside line, would be that one. And you can see where your thrust tube houses your EDF fan shroud. There's for the 28, the 30 is right there. So they're kind of in a different position inside the thrust tube. So make sure you remember that. I'll do a whole build video on this whole thrust tube. And all my builds are the same as far as the thrust tube. Maybe the length may change, or the diameter of the EDF you're using. So we'll get a whole video on that. Alright, another little tip I'll give you is when you're done building your plane, it's all painted, everything's installed and good. I usually put some carbon fiber rod in certain places. Just going to drop it on here to show you where I usually put it. Put it right on my CG line. I put 2 coming up to the nose, right to the ends, to the front of your ears, so when you come into the grass they don't crack off or nothing. And you can even have them right to the very edge of them. And you can put carbon fiber wherever you want. I just got this little 1mm stuff here. That's the stuff I use. All my control horns are micro control horns from Dubro. You can get all the electronics for these and all the parts from your local hobby shop. I go to Prop Shop Hobbies on Van Dyke and Warren. I got everything I need there. Alright, I'll show you a couple other builds we got coming up. Here's the micro 30mm ducted fan bat jet. This is one that I basically designed. This one's more from the movie. This is one I designed. And this here, we start getting into the thrust vectoring nozzles that I make. And I'll do a whole video on that too when I do making the thrust tube. As you can see, it's controlled by 2 control horns, control rods leading up to your servos. It's all thrust vectoring. You can even make these planes fly with no tails using that thrust vectoring system. Might as well go ahead and show you some other builds we're going to be doing. We got the Euroraptor 70mm EDF. We got my Batwing, the one I designed, the bigger version. It's 64 millimeter, 70 millimeter bat wing. We got the micro, what was this, the Euroraptor I called it, I think. It's got a thrust vectoring system, so we'll do a whole thing on that. Here's the MiG-29, ultra micro MiG-29 with a thrust vectoring system on it. Later on we'll get into making these kind of canopies here, these 3D ones, and fuselage. There's some other stuff I've got for plans. A 3D profile plane using the micro striker parts. Here's the two I already did videos on. I'll be doing a video on the Hangar 9 biplane I built. That thing floats on the air. Then here's some upcoming stuff we got. I'm going to do a, I forget, is that the F-17 or... Then I got the, oh, this is the F-117 stealth fighter. I've already built one of these, but I sold it to somebody. So I'll just rebuild another one. We got the F-22 Raptor. There's, of course, the micro bat wings we just were working on. Oh, we got the X-36 project. This is a plane I built, and I was already tore it apart to start building other stuff. But I'll be doing a build on that, too. Alright, so just a quick recap. Once you're assembled, your main fuselage assembled, paint it all black, top and bottom, inside and out. Don't install this until your last piece, because you're going to install all your electronics and your ducted fan and your servos. And I'll be doing videos on how to hook up control rods to your servos. I always push my control horns in through the bottom up, leave the peg hang out the bottom. It gets your right height. Alright, let's go over something real fast too. On your final setup, when you got all your remote and your receiver all dialed in and everything's hooked up, here's the airfoil you're going to want. As you can see, the tails kind of kick upward in the back, and the nose has our airfoil we made. So it kind of creates one big airfoil throughout the whole jet. Here's my ducted fan unit already installed. I'll get out and do a flight video of this tomorrow for you. You guys are going to love it. Alright, good luck with your builds. Over and out.